as well as Savannah's Victorian Society local chapter. Here tonight, Shannon will be telling you about her experiences at Newport. So without any more ado, welcome Shannon.
Thank you, Ron, and welcome and thank you everyone for coming tonight to our first organized event since the reorganization of the local chapter of the Victorian Society in America. As a group, we are excited to bring to Savannah this organization that focuses on a time period in history that is so prevalent in this town. As a local chapter, we pursue the study and enjoyment of the Victorian era in relation to Savannah. The national organization focuses on the broader range of the effects of the Victorian era in relation to architecture, society, decorative arts, furniture design, the people of that era in America, and the influences from England. The Victorian Society of America has summer schools in Newport, Rhode Island, and London, as has been mentioned by some of the other people so far, where students learn in the field from prominent scholars directly from the source of history. Today, as Ron has mentioned, I'll be sharing my experience of the Victorian Society of America's summer school in Newport, Rhode Island, which I attended in June. Since there isn't enough time to talk about each building, I will have a slideshow that has a selection of images that I've taken over the course of the 10 days in the program. And if you have any questions on buildings and the photographs or other parts of the program that I can mention, feel free to ask any questions at the end. I became involved with the Victorian Society of America through my internship advisor at the State Historical Society of Iowa, who knew the director of the program, Richard Guy Wilson. With a passion for the 19th century architecture and society, I knew the summer school program would inspire my education. As a graduate student here at Savannah College of Art and Design in the MFA photography program, I am able to pursue my passion for architecture through my classwork as well as other opportunities such as this Victorian Society summer school experience. Exhausted from finishing my finals the day before arriving in Newport at the summer school, I was reinvigorated by my first meeting with Richard Guy Wilson, the man I had been hearing so much about. I had heard he was an amazing professor, a kind man, a captivating person, which would unfold over the next week. He made us feel welcome, introducing himself as Richard, not Director or Dr. Wilson or Professor Wilson, just Richard. He shared with us an introduction of the prominent figures, concepts, and movements we would learn over the course of the 10 days. His passion and enthusiasm spread through each student as we sat in the audience, overwhelmed by the fact we were finally in Newport. As the hours passed and the students began to get to know one another, the underlying link that we shared was not only our passion to learn, but our love for looking at buildings, as we called it. As part of the 31st Annual American Summer School, we started out on our first day of tours, spreading across the Newport terrain, with wide eyes and eagerness to learn and see. After a long day, we ended with a reception of the home of James Michael Jr. and Richard Nelson. It was a proper Victorian affair at their home, which they had purchased and restored, complete with refreshing beverages, lovely hors d'oeuvres, and captivating conversation. The moment I knew that our days would not be filled with house tours and lectures, but also with excitement, was on our way to Chateau-sur-Mer, where Richard climbed atop the moon gate, as you can see here in this image, and professed from this height that what we should know about the William Wetmore House, where we were to travel to next, and the purpose of this gate for pedestrians. And this is Chateau-sur-Mer here. Along with being guided through this historically important town and architecture by Richard, other experts such as Paul Miller, who is part of the Preservation Society of Newport County, provided their own perspective. Mr. Miller led us through the Isaac Bell House, which is now owned by the Preservation Society of Newport County, revealing a home in the process of being preserved. As students, we were able to observe a different type of preservation example compared to the pristine mansions along with their furniture and artwork. And this is the Isaac Bell House here. The Bell House displayed the purity of the architectural forms and details with no distraction of decoration. As Mr. Miller pointed out the wooden features of the home, the light streaked through the windows, spilling over the central stairs and bringing out the highlights of the wood. Entranced by Mr. Miller's captivating presentation of the home, one could understand the dedication he and the Preservation Society felt towards the home. Another unique example of preservation came when touring the Henry Lippett House in Providence, Rhode Island. And that's actually a group shot that we have of this year's summer school. While preserving this grand Victorian 19th century home, they have taken a unique approach in raising money to help maintain the architecture and history for the future. Along with guided tours, house tours, parts of the home have been set up for people to live in and rent out. By allowing people a rare chance to live in a historically important home while utilizing the monetary advantages of renters, it gives Lippett House a chance to be reawakened from the disintegration of age that otherwise may not happen. Over the course of the 10 days, we traveled throughout Newport, touring the major mansions, smaller homes of prominent architects or unique styles, which some were owned by the Preservation Society and others were privately owned, as well as surrounding towns in Rhode Island such as Pawtucket, Providence, and towns in Massachusetts such as Northeastern, New Bedford, and Fairhaven. Along with learning in the field, we also had lectures dispersed throughout the days, in which Richard would provide background information on the figures, styles, and houses we would see that day and the days to come. Other scholars would give nightly lectures on their area of expertise, such as Jennifer Carlquist, who talked on the Newport Decorative Arts. It was a great opportunity to learn in the field with Richard and other scholars, as well as make connections with other students who are passionate about the particularities of the 19th century, design, the history, preservation, and architecture. As a photographer, I experienced this Newport adventure through the eye of the lens, and not only recall it from memory, but also from my visual records that I have created. Being involved with the Newport Summer School was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that I am fortunate to have had a chance to be a part of. This occasion, to capture these grand landmarks in history that are otherwise restricted from photographing, will aid my continual study of built form and culture. As I move forward in attaining my master's degree in photography, this visual and intellectual study of Newport Victorian architecture and society will launch my work in ways I have yet to realize, such as future work in historic preservation. So if you have any questions about the summer school, the Newport Summer School, or our organization, or even just my images, feel free to ask. And my PowerPoint is going to continue throughout the evening during the reception if you want to take a look at it. The images for me. Yes.
Which house is your favorite?
That's so hard. Chateau Sommer.
So if you could own one, that would be it.
Mm-hmm.
That's hot.
What was the, how many students were there altogether?
There was 29 this year.
Age spread?
Age was, there was graduate students, there was about 7 or 8 of us, and then there were people in their late 20s, 30s, 40s, and even there was one woman in her 60s, or 60 to 70.
You had a picture of King's Coat. You might tell them the connection between King's Coat and Savannah.
You know, I don't remember the exact connection. Do you want to feel free
Was
to
it Noble Jones? Built it.
What was that?
Noble Jones.
Noble Jones.
I think built King's Coat.
Beth, please share. Would you?
Yeah, can you give a little?
Well, I can't give much more than that. He built it up. He was at Wormslow.
What year was it built?
1838.
Okay.
Noble Jones had worked with Richard Upjohn on that particular building. Upjohn had done a few similar works. That was a summer place for members of the family until it got less and less pleasant for Southerners to spend time in the summer up north. And they eventually relinquished the place, and I'm not sure exactly when it was. So nice Savannah connections, Newport.
There was about 5 to sometimes 10 homes that we saw a day in 10 days. So I don't remember particularities of every single home, I'm sorry.
And Richard Guy Wilson, of course, teaches at UVA, and he may not have pointed out that connection to students, perhaps not knowing or not realizing they were from Spain.
Yes.
This is a very elementary question, but, you know, you see the buildings that you've shown, and I think, well, there's a neoclassical, and there's a this and that, because my image of Victorian is the turned wood and the gables and asymmetry, the places. So when we say Victorian, we mean in a certain age period, not in a certain style. Is that correct?
That is correct. And the Victorian era spanned from, it was a very long span. Was it 1836, 7?
And she died in 1901, so
Right.
you're talking her lifetime.
Right. And so that, and what was interesting also, seeing the examples up close this summer, was what consisted of the Victorian style is almost a mishmash, if you will, of styles. There's some that are much more fluid in one specific style, and then there's other Victorian homes that are classified as Victorian homes that have a mix of different styles that you can see sometimes is different on the exterior, and then the interior is a completely different style.
So do we ever use the term Victorian also to just suggest Hugh Goldson's house or Alvin Neely's house, or, you know, is it ever applied to a certain style of architecture, or is it always just a certain time period?
Well, the time period, a specific style was built during that time period, so there's multiple styles that we can classify as Victorian style. It's a broad umbrella term.
Thank you.
It's not a specific, and it's a hard question to answer. There's no specific
Well, it is a-
answer to it.
Let me say something. It just is an interesting long period in that if we just look at Savannah's architecture from 1837 to 1901 and look at prominent residences and other buildings, we recognize that there are umpteen different approaches to design and stylistic styles that are being featured throughout Savannah, from neoclassical and Greek revival to Gothic revival, Italianate, Second Empire, Queen Anne style variations, among others. But I know that we often tend to think maybe of buildings such as what's on the screen as what we think of Victorian, that kind of asymmetrical profile that is characteristic of Queen Anne and American versions of Queen Anne style architecture. And the kinds of interiors that we often find inside with their marvelous kind of jumble of things artfully displayed